The stars burned cold and silent above Velox's prime. Inside the damaged bridge of the last surviving Veloxi cruiser, Captain Thelver watched his world die. Through the viewing screen, he could see the enemy ships. 47 Krathan warships circled his planet like hungry predators. Every few minutes, bright red beams shot down from the blockade, hitting the planetary shields below. Each impact made the shields flicker and fade a little more. Thelver's hand shook as he gripped his command chair. His ship, the Morning Light, had fought bravely. So had the rest of the Veloxi fleet. But brave was not enough against the Krathan Dominion. The enemy had better weapons, stronger shields, and more ships. One by one, the Veloxi defenders had fallen. Now only the Morning Light remained, hiding in the shadow of a dead moon, too damaged to fight but too stubborn to surrender. "Captain," his communications officer said quietly, "the planetary shields are at 15%. They estimate 2 hours before complete failure." 2 hours. 2 hours before the Krathan could begin landing their troops. 2 hours before millions of Veloxi civilians would face the infamous Krathan ground forces. Thelver had heard the stories. The Krathan did not take prisoners who resisted. They did not show mercy. He made his decision. "Open all channels," Thelver ordered. "All frequencies. Emergency distress protocol." His crew looked at him with tired hope in their eyes. They knew this was their last chance. The Galactic Council was far away. Weeks of travel, even at top speed. But maybe, just maybe, someone closer would hear them. Any of the allied species? Any ship with weapons and the will to fight? Thelver spoke clearly into the communicator. "This is Captain Thelver of the Veloxi Republic to any ships in range. We are under attack. Our world is dying. The Krathan Dominion has blockaded our planet. Our defenses have failed. We need immediate assistance. I repeat, we need immediate assistance. Our coordinates are," he read off the numbers that marked his homeworlds, "location in space." The message went out on every frequency the Veloxi knew. It scattered into space, bouncing off relay stations, diving through the dark between stars. Most of the message traveled the normal paths, heading toward Council space where help might come from eventually, if at all. But a small portion of the signal caught something strange. A wormhole anomaly, unstable and random, grabbed part of the transmission and threw it far off course. The signal tumbled through twisted space and emerged somewhere it was never meant to go. It traveled into a region that every Galactic Council map marked in red with simple words: "Quarantine Zone 7, Deathworld System. Do not approach." The signal reached a ship. Commander Day stood on the bridge of the KSNS Taejong, a human destroyer on routine patrol. His shift had been quiet, almost boring. That was about to change. "Sir," Lieutenant Hannah called from her station, "I'm picking up something strange. It's an emergency broadcast, I think. Not in any language our computers recognize." Day walked over to her console. "Play it." The message crackled through the speakers. The words were alien, but the tone was unmistakable. Fear, desperation, a plea for help. "Can you get a translation?" Day asked. Hannah worked quickly, her fingers dancing over her controls. "The AI is working on it. Give me a minute." She frowned at her screen. "Sir, this signal came from outside our territory." "Way outside?" "I'm talking about crossing into unknown space." Day watched the translation slowly appear on the screen. When he read it, his jaw tightened. Someone was dying. Someone was calling for help. Someone needed a military response right now. "How far?" he asked. "The coordinates put them about 2 days away at full FTL," Hannah replied. "But sir, we're not supposed to go past the boundary markers. First contact protocols require—" "I know the protocols, Lieutenant," Day interrupted. He stared at the message on the screen. 20 years in the service had taught him many things. One of them was simple. When someone calls for help, you answer. Rules could be discussed later. "Get me Admiral Yuna, priority channel." Minutes later, the Fleet Admiral's face appeared on his screen. Admiral Yuna looked like she had been woken from sleep, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "This better be important, Commander." Day explained the situation quickly and played her the translated message. Yuna listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "What?" "You know what happens if we cross into uncharted space?" she finally said. "We could start an incident. The Council already doesn't like us being this close to their borders." Yes, Ma'am Day agreed. "But that message is real. Those people are dying right now." Una smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had made up her mind to break the rules. "Agreed. I'm authorizing a full battle group response. You'll have 3 carriers, 12 destroyers, and 8 frigates. Colonel Wu's Marines are loading up now. We jump to FTL in 30 minutes. "Thank you, Admiral," Day said. "Don't thank me yet," Una replied. "We have no idea what we're jumping into. Could be a civil war. Could be pirates. Could be something worse. But you're right about one thing: when someone calls for help, we answer. That's what makes us different." The channel closed. Day turned to his crew. "You heard the Admiral? All hands to battle stations. Plot a course to those coordinates. Maximum FTL speed." Around him, the bridge came alive with activity. Hannah worked on refining the translation. The navigator plotted the jump coordinates. The weapons officer began running diagnostics on all systems. Day looked out at the stars and wondered what they would find at the end of their journey. The signal had said something about a blockade, about an enemy called the Krathin. He had never heard of either the victims or the attackers, but that did not matter. Someone had called for help. The human fleet was coming, and the galaxy was about to learn that the quarantined species from the death world called Earth did not abandon people who needed them. The human fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Valaxis system like sharks emerging from dark water. Admiral Eunice stood on the bridge of her flagship, the KSN's Inchin, and studied the tactical display with cold eyes. What she saw made her angry. "Count them," she ordered. Commander Tay, her tactical officer, worked quickly. 47 enemy vessels in blockade formation around the planet. They're firing on the surface intermittently. It looks like they're wearing down defensive shields. He paused. "Admiral, I'm also detecting one smaller vessel hiding near that moon. Signature matches the distress call origin. Must be whoever sent the message. And the planet?" Una asked. "Life signs in the billions. Civilian population centers are still intact, but their shields won't last much longer." Una nodded slowly. She had seen this before in her career. A strong enemy attacking a weak victim. Bullies who picked fights they knew they could win. She hated bullies. "Open a channel to all ships," she commanded. "This is Admiral Una to all vessels. We have a hot situation. Civilian population under attack by hostile force. Rules of engagement are weapons free on any ship that fires on us or the planet. Marines, prep for possible planetary assault. We're ending this blockade right now." On the damaged Valaxi cruiser, Captain Thelver nearly fell out of his chair when his sensors officer shouted, "Captain, new contacts." Multiple vessels just entered the system. Thelver felt his heart race. Could it be? Had the Council actually responded in time? How many ships? "I'm counting 23 vessels. Wait, they're not Council designs. I've never seen these configurations before." Thelver pulled up the visual feed and stared. The ships were brutal looking. Angular and sharp, covered in armor plating, bristling with weapons. They looked like warships built by a species that loved violence. His hope turned to fear. "Are they more Krathine reinforcements?" "No, sir. Completely different technology. They're not responding to our hails." Thelver watched the unknown fleet spread out into attack formation. Oh no, were these pirates? Or another predator species attracted to the chaos? His planet could not survive 2 enemies. On his throne-like command chair aboard the Krathin flagship, War Prince Vakith noticed the new arrivals. He leaned forward with interest. The Krathin Dominion had not conquered half the outer rim by being careless. He studied the strange ships carefully. "Communications, send them a standard dominance broadcast," Vakath ordered. "Tell them this system is claimed by the Krathin Dominion. They will leave immediately, or be destroyed." His communications officer worked quickly, sending the message in 17 different Council languages. The reply came back in none of those languages. Instead, it came in weapons fire. "Lieutenant Huyon, the human translator, had been working frantically to decode the alien message. When she finally got it translated, she walked quickly to Admiral Yuna. "Ma'am, the big ships around the planet just sent us a message. They say this is their territory and we need to leave, or they'll destroy us." Yuna raised one eyebrow. "They threatened us?" "Yes, ma'am, I see." Yuna turned to Commander Tay. "Give me firing solutions on all 47 hostile vessels. Target their engines first. I want them disabled, not destroyed. Not yet, anyway. Let's see if they're smart enough to run." "Solutions locked, Admiral. Fire." The human destroyers opened up at a range that shocked every non-human in the system. Railguns mounted along the spine of each destroyer accelerated magnetic rounds to 30% the speed of light. At that velocity, even a small projectile carried devastating kinetic energy. The rounds crossed the distance in seconds. The first Krathian ship never knew what hit it. One moment it was holding position in the blockade. The next moment, 3 railgun rounds punched through its shields like they were not even there, tore through the armor plating, and ripped the engine section completely off the ship. The vessel spun helplessly, venting atmosphere and debris in 5 seconds. 4 more Krathian ships joined it as crippled wrecks. War Prince Vakith stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "What just happened? Where did those weapons come from?" "Unknown, my lord. The enemy ships fired from outside our maximum range. Our sensors barely detected the projectiles before impact. Return fire." All ships returned fire. The Krathian fleet broke formation, turning to face the human ships. Energy beams lanced out, bright and deadly. They hit the human shields and splashed harmlessly away. The humans had designed their shields to handle high-energy weapons. The Krathian were using the standard Council technology, powerful, predictable. More human railgun rounds tore into the Krathian formation. Ship after ship lost engines, weapons, or entire sections. The blockade was not holding it. It was dying. Captain Thelver watched in complete shock. "What are those ships? Who are they?" His tactical officer could barely speak. "Captain, I've never seen anything like this. They're killing Krathian warships like they're nothing. The Krathian are supposed to be unstoppable." "Try hailing the unknown vessels again," Thelver ordered. "Maybe they'll answer now." This time, they did. A face appeared on Thelver's screen. It was an alien face, but not terrifying. It looked almost familiar to eyes, a nose, a mouth. The alien had dark hair and wore a military uniform. "This is Commander Day of the KSNS Taejung," the alien said. Lieutenant Hannah was translating in real time now, the AI learning the Valaxi language quickly. "Are you the ship that sent the distress signal?" "Yes," Thelver answered quickly. "Yes, I'm Captain Thelver." "Who are you?" "Where did you come from?" "We received your emergency broadcast," Day explained. "We're here to help." "Stay where you are. We'll handle the blockade. But who are you?" Thelver asked again. Day smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was confident. "We're human. From Earth. And we don't like bullies." The channel closed. Thelver sat back in his chair, his mind racing. Human? Earth? He had never heard of either. But as he watched the mysterious humans tear through the Krathian blockade with casual efficiency, he realized something important. The distress signal had not reached the Galactic Council. It had not reached any of the allied species. It had reached someone else entirely, and these someones were very, very good at violence. War Prince Vakith made a decision. He was a warrior, but he was not stupid. "All ships retreat. Jump to FTL. We're leaving." But the humans were not finished. As the Krathian ships tried to power up their FTL drives, human frigates moved with impossible speed, firing precision shots that disabled jump engines. Ship after ship found itself trapped, unable to flee, unable to fight effectively. Admiral Yuna watched 12 Krathian vessels escape into FTL. She let them go. Let them run home and tell stories about what they found here. The remaining 35 ships were now dead in space or trying to surrender. "Yes. Ceasefire," Yuna ordered. "Hannah, send a message to that Valaxi ship. Tell them the blockade is broken and they're safe now." Also tell them we're going to need to talk. As the guns fell silent, Yuna looked at the planet below. Billions of lives saved. Another successful mission. And now the galaxy would learn something it should have known all along. Humans kept their promises. Even promises made to strangers. War Prince Vakath ran. His flagship jumped to FTL with 11 other surviving vessels, leaving behind the shattered remains of his blockade force. As his ship raced away from Valix's Prime, Vakath worked quickly. He needed to warn the Dominion about these humans. He needed to tell them what had happened. His hands moved over the communication console, recording everything. This is War Prince Vakath to Dominion Command. We encountered an unknown species at Valix's Prime. They call themselves humans. They have weapons technology far beyond Council standards. They destroyed our blockade in minutes. I'm sending all sensor data now. These humans are extremely dangerous. The message transmitted toward Krathine space. Vakath sat back in his command throne, his body shaking with rage and something he rarely felt fear. The humans had not just beaten him. They had made it look easy. Back at Valix's Prime, the human fleet maintained position around the planet. The surrendered Krathine ships were being held under guard, while Admiral Yuna decided what to do with them. But she had a more immediate problem. Admiral, Commander Tay said quietly. Sensors are detecting Krathine ground forces on the planet's surface. They're scattered across 6 major cities. Looks like they landed troops before we arrived. Yuna's expression went cold. How many civilians in those cities? Approximately 4 million. And the Krathine troops are doing what exactly? Tay pulled up visual feeds from the surface. What he saw made his stomach turn. They're trying to hold hostages, ma'am. Using civilians as shields. They're threatening to start executing people if we don't withdraw. For a long moment, the bridge was silent. Every person there knew what Admiral Yuna was thinking. They had all served with her long enough to recognize that particular look on her face. Someone had just made a terrible mistake. Get me Colonel Wu, Yuna said quietly. Tell him it's time for the Marines to earn their pay. In the hangar bay of the carrier QNS Seoul, Colonel Wu received his orders and smiled. He turned to his assembled Marines, 200 of the toughest soldiers humanity had ever produced. They wore powered combat armor that made them look like walking tanks. They carried weapons that could punch through reinforced concrete. Listen up, Wu shouted. We've got Krathine ground forces holding civilians hostage in 6 cities. Command wants them removed. Dead or alive, I don't care, but those civilians better not have a scratch on them when we're done. You know the drill. Drop pods in 5 minutes. Questions? Major Nari raised her hand. Rules of engagement, sir? Wu's smile got wider. If it's wearing Krathine armor and it's not surrendering, kill it. Simple enough? Yes, sir. The Marines loaded into drop pods. These were not gentle transport shuttles. These were armored capsules designed to survive atmospheric entry at high speed and hit the ground like meteors. Inside each pod, Marines checked their weapons one last time and waited. On the planet's surface, in the city of Velaranas, a Krathine squad leader named Takavar held his weapon to the head of a Veloxi civilian. Around him, 20 Krathine soldiers had gathered nearly 100 Veloxi into the central square. They were using them as hostages, hoping to force the mysterious human ships to leave. If those ships don't retreat, Takavar announced in broken Veloxi, we start killing your people. 1 every minute until they leave. The Veloxi civilians huddled together in terror. They had heard stories about Krathine cruelty. They believed the threats. Then the sky started screaming. 40 drop pods hit the atmosphere above Velranas like falling stars. They glowed red-hot from friction, trailing fire behind them. The Krathine soldiers looked up in confusion. What were those? The pods hit the ground at terminal velocity. The impact craters they created were 3 meters deep. Takavar stumbled from the shockwave. When he looked up, the pod doors were opening. Major Nari stepped out of her pod and assessed the situation in 2 seconds. Hostages in the center. Krathine soldiers surrounding them. 20 hostiles. Her armor's computer had already tagged each enemy target and calculated firing solutions. "All units, this is Nari," she said over the marine frequency. "Precision fire only. Do not hit civilians. Engage," her squad opened fire. The Krathin never had a chance. Human weapons fired hypersonic rounds that could not be dodged. In 3 seconds, 15 Krathin soldiers were down. The remaining 5 tried to return fire, but their energy weapons bounced off the marine, armor like light from a mirror. Tokovar tried to use his hostage as a shield. He pressed his weapon tighter against the Valaxi civilian's head. "Stop, or I kill." Sergeant Mira's shot took him in the head from 40 meters away. Perfect accuracy. The Valaxi hostage stumbled forward, shocked but unharmed. The last 4 Krathin dropped their weapons and raised their hands. They had seen enough. "Secure the prisoners," Nari ordered. "Medic, check the civilians for injuries." The Valaxi civilians stared at the human soldiers in awe and terror. The Marines stood over 2 meters tall in their armor. They moved with mechanical precision. They had just killed 15 enemy soldiers in seconds without harming a single civilian. One young Valaxi child approached Major Nari slowly. The child looked up at the towering armored figure and asked in a small voice, "Are you going to hurt us too?" Nari knelt down, making herself smaller. She opened her helmet faceplate so the child could see her face, a human face, with kind eyes. "No, little one. We're here to protect you. You're safe now." Across the 6 cities, the same scene repeated. Human Marines dropped from the sky like avenging angels. They hit hard and fast. Krathin soldiers who had terrorized civilians for days were eliminated in minutes. The few who tried to fight back discovered that human soldiers were faster, stronger, and much better trained. Sergeant Mira's squad cleared an entire district in 40 minutes. When Krathin troops tried to fortify a building, Mira simply called for an orbital strike. A precision railgun round from the destroyer KSNS Taejung turned the building into rubble. The Krathin inside never knew what hit them by the time the sun set on Valaxis Prime. All Krathin ground forces had been eliminated or captured. Human casualties, 17 wounded, 0 killed. Krathin casualties, 432 dead, 68 captured. Valaxi civilian casualties, 0 captain. Thelver watched the operation from orbit and could barely believe what he was seeing. These humans fought like nothing he had ever witnessed. They were precise, brutal, and somehow still protective of civilians. The Krathin were supposed to be unstoppable ground fighters. But against the humans, they had been nothing. Admiral Yuna's face appeared on Thelver's communication screen. "Captain Thelver, this is Admiral Yuna. The planet is secure. All hostile forces have been neutralized. We're beginning humanitarian operations now. Our medical ships will dock with your stations to help with the wounded." Thelver struggled to find words. "Admiral, we don't know how to thank you. You saved our entire world." Yuna's expression softened slightly. "You called for help. We answered. That's all there is to it." She paused. "We need to talk, Captain. Face to face. Will you come aboard my flagship?" "Of course, Admiral. Immediately." As Thelver prepared to shuttle over to the human carrier, he felt both gratitude and deep concern. His people had been saved by these mysterious humans from a quarantined death world. But what did the humans want in return? And what would happen when the Galactic Council learned that the quarantine had been broken? On the KSNS Inchin, Lieutenant Hayen was monitoring multiple channels when she suddenly stiffened. "Admiral, we have a problem. I'm picking up transmissions converging on this location. The Krathin sent a distress call before they retreated, and someone else is broadcasting from Council space. I think they detected our military transmissions." Admiral Yuna nodded calmly. "How long until we have company?" "Unknown, ma'am. Could be hours, could be days." "Then we better prepare," Yuna said, "because the galaxy is about to learn that the humans from the quarantine zone are not staying quiet anymore." Captain Thelver's shuttle approached the human carrier KSN's Inchin with nervous anticipation. He had never been inside a warship from a species he did not know. As his small craft entered the hangar bay, he noticed how different everything looked. The human ship was built for function, not beauty. Every surface was reinforced metal. Every corner had a weapon mount or security station. When he stepped off the shuttle, a human officer was waiting. The human was smaller than Thelver expected most. Species that built such aggressive warships were large and intimidating. But this human woman had sharp eyes and carried herself with quiet confidence. "Captain Thelver," the human asked. "I'm Lieutenant Hannah. Welcome aboard the Inchin. Admiral Yuna is waiting for you in the conference room. Please follow me." Thelver followed her through corridors that felt cramped by his standards. The gravity was slightly higher than he was comfortable with. The air had more oxygen than he was used to. These small details made him realize something unsettling. The humans had not adjusted their environment for him. This was their normal. Admiral Yuna waited in a simple conference room with several other human officers. She stood when Thelver entered and extended her hand in what he recognized as a greeting gesture from his cultural database. "Captain Thelver, thank you for coming," Yuna said as they shook hands. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Thelver sat carefully in a chair that was almost too small for him. "Admiral, before we begin, I must thank you again. You saved 4 million civilians today. My entire species owes you a debt we can never repay." Yuna waved her hand dismissively. "You don't owe us anything, Captain. We did what anyone should do when they hear a call for help." She leaned forward. "But I need to understand something. Why was your planet attacked? Who are these Krathen, and why did your council not help you?" Thelver felt shame wash over him. The Krathen Dominion has been expanding aggressively for years. They conquer weaker species and force them into their empire. My people appealed to the Galactic Council for protection, but ... double quotes, he trailed off. "But what?" Commander Tay asked from across the table. "Yeah, but the council moves slowly," Thelver admitted. "They form committees. They debate. They pass resolutions. By the time they agreed to help us, the Krathen were already at our borders. And when the attack came, the council said they could not send military forces in time. They said we should try to negotiate." Admiral Yuna's expression hardened. "They told you to negotiate with people who were bombing your cities?" "Yes." The humans around the table exchanged looks. Thelver saw anger in their faces, anger directed at the council, not at him. "That's when I sent the distress signal," Thelver continued. "I broadcast on all frequencies, hoping someone would hear." "Anyone?" He looked at Yuna. "Psst. But Admiral, I must tell you something. The signal was not meant for you. It was supposed to reach council space, to reach allied species within our political structure. Then how did we receive it?" Yuna asked. "We believe the signal was caught by a wormhole anomaly and redirected to your space. To a region that we call Quarantine Zone 7. The human officers went very still. Lieutenant Hang spoke carefully. "Captain, you know about the quarantine?" "Yes," Thelver said. "The council established it 30 years ago when they discovered your species. They declared Earth a high-risk death world and forbade all contact with humans." He looked around the table nervously. "I must admit, when I realized who had come to help us, I was terrified. The council files say humans are extremely dangerous. They say your world has gravity that would crush most species. They say your atmosphere has poison levels of oxygen. They say you evolved as apex predators on a planet covered in natural disasters and deadly creatures." Commander Jin laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. "And because of that, they locked us away like we were monsters." "I am sorry," Thelver said quietly. "But after seeing you fight today, I understand why they feared you. The Krathen are considered elite warriors across the galaxy. You destroyed them easily." Admiral Yuna stood and walked to a wall display. She pulled up an image of Earth, a blue and green planet with white clouds. "Captain, let me explain something about humans. Yes, our world is harsh by council standards. Yes, we evolved to survive in conditions that would kill many species. But that is not what makes us dangerous." She turned to face him. "What makes us dangerous is that we remember what it feels like to be helpless. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other, hurting each other, making terrible mistakes. We learned the hard way what happens when the strong prey on the weak. We learned what happens when good people do nothing." Her voice became firm. That is why we came when you called. Not because we are violent, but because we refuse to stand by and watch innocents suffer. Delver felt his eyes fill with tears. The council was wrong about you. Yes, they were, Yuna agreed. And they're about to find out just how wrong. There was a knock on the door. Commander Yoon, the medical officer, entered with another human who wore a scientist's uniform. Admiral, sorry to interrupt, but you need to hear this. The scientist, Dr. Jia, looked uncomfortable. Admiral, we've been treating wounded Valaxi in our medical bay. While running standard medical scans, we discovered something concerning about the Valaxi physiology compared to our own. Explain, Yuna ordered. Dr. Jia pulled up comparative data on the display. The Valaxi are actually fairly typical for council species, but compared to humans, they're fragile. Their bone density is 60% of ours. Their muscle mass ratio is lower. Their oxygen processing is less efficient. Their gravity tolerance is half what we can handle. She paused. Admiral, by council medical standards, we're not just strong. We're impossibly strong. Captain Thelver stared at the data. Is this accurate? I'm afraid so, Dr. Jia said. In fact, I've been comparing human baseline physiology to council medical databases. Almost every species in the council would be considered weak by human standards. Your soldiers, your workers, your athletes, they would all struggle to survive on Earth for more than a few hours. That's why they quarantined you, Thelver said slowly. They were not just afraid of your technology or your aggression. They were afraid because you're naturally superior in almost every physical category. It's not superior, Yuna corrected gently. Just different. We adapted to a harsh world. That doesn't make us better than anyone else. Lieutenant Hyan spoke up from her station near the door. Admiral, I hate to interrupt, but we have incoming signals. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL at the system edge. One count over 300 vessels. They're broadcasting Krathan identification codes. The room went silent. 300 ships. The humans had 23 ships in their battle group. Colonel Wu, who had been listening quietly, stood up. What are your orders, Admiral? Admiral Yuna walked back to her chair and sat down calmly. She looked at Captain Thelver. Captain, I need you to return to your ship and stay away from the coming battle. Keep your people safe. Admiral, you cannot fight 300 ships with only 23. Thelver protested. You should retreat. My people will understand. You've already done more than enough. Yuna smiled. It was the same cold smile she had given Commander Day when he first reported the distress call. Captain, you're right that we're outnumbered. But you forget something important. She stood and gestured to the humans around her. We're from a death world. We don't run from bullies. We fight them. She turned to her officers. Send a message to all ships. Battle stations. Prepare to engage a hostile fleet. Also send a message to the approaching Krathan. Tell them they have one chance to retreat peacefully. If they continue their approach, we will consider it an act of war. Captain Thelver was escorted back to his shuttle. As he flew back to the morning light, he looked at the human fleet floating in space. 23 ships against 300. It should be a slaughter. But as he watched the human vessels form up into battle formation, moving with precise coordination, he realized something. The Krathan had made a terrible mistake. They thought numbers would matter. They thought they could overwhelm the humans with superior force. They had not learned the lesson from the first battle. These humans from the quarantined Deathworld were not like other species. They did not fight to survive. They fought to win. The Krathan Dominion fleet emerged from FTL like a swarm of angry insects. 300 warships. Led by War Marshal Drekther, aboard the massive battleship. Crimson Fang. This was the largest military force the Dominion had assembled in a century. It was meant to be overwhelming. It was meant to terrify. War Marshal Drekther sat on his command throne and studied the tactical display. The human ships were still there, exactly where War Prince Vakath had said they would be. Only 23 vessels. Drekther almost laughed. Vakath had lost to these humans because he had been careless and unprepared. But Drekther was neither of those things. He had brought enough force to crush 10 human fleets. Send them the standard surrender demand, Drekther ordered. Tell them to leave immediately or face destruction. The message transmitted toward the human fleet. The reply came quickly. Lieutenant Haeon translated it for the Krathan language computer. This is Admiral Yuna of the Korean Systems Naval Service. You attacked a defenseless species and were defeated. You have been given the opportunity to retreat. You chose to return with greater numbers. Very well. Let me show you why the Council quarantined us. Hector stared at the message. The arrogance. These humans with their tiny fleet thought they could threaten him. He leaned forward in his throne. All ships, attack formation. We will sweep these insects from space. Cross-council space. The Galactic Council was holding an emergency session. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber, arguing and debating. The topic, what to do about the humans who had broken the quarantine ambassador. Veltrix of the Valaxi stood at the speaking podium, his voice shaking with emotion. You must understand. The humans saved my world. 4 million of my people are alive because they responded to our distress call. While this council debated and formed committees, they acted. A representative from the Thoine Empire shouted back, they violated the quarantine. They exposed us all to a Deathworld species. Who knows what diseases they carry? What aggression they will show? Aggression. Veltrix shouted. They showed mercy. They could have destroyed the Krathine completely, but they let survivors escape. They protected our civilians while eliminating the enemy soldiers. What more do you want from them? The council erupted in arguments. Some demanded military action against Earth. Others pointed out that the humans had just prevented a genocide. Still others worried about what would happen if humans decided to expand into council space. Then a priority message arrived. The Krathan Dominion had dispatched their largest fleet to Valaxis Prime. 300 warships were engaging the human fleet right now. The council chamber went silent as they waited for news of the battle at Valaxis Prime. Captain Thelver watched from his crippled cruiser as the battle began. He expected it to be over quickly. 300 Krathine ships against 23 human vessels. The math was simple. He was right that it would be over quickly. He was wrong about who would win. The Krathan fleet advanced in standard, council battle formation, a massive wall meant to present maximum firepower. While protecting vulnerable vessels in the center, it was a proven tactic that had won hundreds of battles. Admiral Yuna watched the Krathan approach and smiled. They're using the same formation everyone in the council uses. They haven't adapted at all. She turned to Commander Tay. Split the fleet. Carrier Group Alpha goes high, Beta goes low. Destroyers form a spear formation and punch straight through their center. Let's show them what happens when you fight someone who doesn't follow your rules. The human fleet broke apart into 3 groups and accelerated. The Krathan opened fire at maximum range, but their energy weapons could not reach the human ships yet. The humans held their fire, closing the distance rapidly. When the human destroyers entered optimal range, they unleashed hell. Railgun rounds tore through the Krathine formation like a knife through paper. The lead Krathan ships never had time to adjust their tactics. One moment they were advancing confidently. The next moment they were debris. Commander Sung, captain of the destroyer KSNS Busan, pushed his ship hard. His railguns fired continuously, each shot calculated by his tactical computer to hit critical systems. Around him, 11 other destroyers did the same. They moved through the Krathine formation. Like sharks through a school of fish, War Marshal Drekther could not believe what he was seeing. His ships were dying. Dozens of them. The humans were supposed to be outnumbered. They were supposed to be overwhelmed. Instead, his carefully planned attack was falling apart. Reform the line, he shouted. Concentrate fire on their lead vessels. But the human ships were not staying in one place. They moved with coordination that seemed impossible. When Krathan ships tried to surround them, the humans simply accelerated away or changed formation. Human pilots and crews operated at efficiency levels that made no sense. The answer was simple but terrifying. Humans evolved on a high gravity world with dangerous predators and constant survival pressure. Their bodies could handle forces that would kill most council species. Their reflexes were faster. Their endurance was greater. A human crew could fight effectively for hours, while council species tired after minutes. The human carriers launched fighter wings. Each small fighter moved with acceleration that should have crushed the pilot inside. But human pilots, trained from childhood to handle high G-forces, they flew through the Krathen fleet like wasps, targeting weapons, systems, and engines with precise strikes. Commander Sung's destroyer took heavy damage. Multiple Krathen ships had concentrated their fire on him, hitting his shields until they failed. Energy beams cut into his armor, breaching multiple compartments. His engineering section was on fire. "Captain, we've lost main power," his chief engineer reported. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. We're dead in space." Sung looked at his tactical display. A Krathen battlecruiser was moving toward them, preparing to finish them off. He made a decision. "All hands, abandon ship," Sung ordered calmly. "Get to the escape pods." "You have 2 minutes. Captain, what about you?" his first officer asked. Sung smiled. "Someone has to pilot this ship one last time." "Now, go." "That's an order." While his crew evacuated, Sung used his maneuvering thrusters to point his crippled destroyer directly at the approaching battlecruiser. He waited until all the escape pods had launched. Then he activated the emergency reactor overload sequence. The KSNES Bizon, moving on momentum and thrusters, crashed into the Krathen battlecruiser at high speed. 1 second later, Sung detonated the reactor. The explosion was massive. The battlecruiser disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire. 3 nearby Krathen ships were caught in the blast and destroyed instantly. Admiral Yuna watched Commander Sung's sacrifice on her tactical display. She closed her eyes for a moment in respect. Then she opened them and her voice went ice cold. "All ships, intensify fire. Make his sacrifice count." The human fleet fought with renewed fury. More Krathen ships died. War Marshal Drekther finally realized the truth. He could not win. These humans were not like any enemy he had ever fought. They did not break. They did not run. Even when damaged and outnumbered, they kept fighting. "All ships retreat," Drekther ordered. "Jump to FTL immediately." The Krathen fleet broke and ran. Ships scattered in every direction, desperately trying to power up their FTL drives before the humans could stop them. Many succeeded. Many did not. When the battle finally ended, only 73 Krathen vessels had escaped. Over 200 were destroyed or captured. The human fleet had lost 12 ships, but they held the field. In the Galactic Council chamber, stunned silence fell when the battle reports arrived. A human force 1/10 the size of the Krathen fleet had won decisively. The implications were staggering. Within hours, an emergency diplomatic team was dispatched to Valaxis Prime. The Council sent their best first contact specialist, Representative Kelvin, with instructions: make peace with the humans at any cost. When Kelvin arrived aboard the KSNS Inchin, he was nervous. He had studied every file the Council had on Deathworld species. Humans were at the top of the danger list, but when Admiral Yuna greeted him in the conference room, she was professional and polite. "Representative Kelvin." "Welcome," Yuna said. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Kelvin sat carefully. "Admiral Yuna, I am here to discuss the quarantine breach and establish formal relations between humanity and the Galactic Council." "We're past discussing the quarantine," Yuna said firmly. "Earth and our colonies will no longer recognize it. We will trade with whom we choose and defend whom we choose. The Council can either accept this or attempt to enforce the quarantine militarily." She paused meaningfully. "I think we both know how that would end." Kelvin felt sweat forming on his skin. This human female was dictating terms to the Council like they were the weak ones. But after seeing what the human fleet had done, he could not argue. "The Council is prepared to acknowledge humanity's sovereignty," Kelvin said carefully. "We would like to establish diplomatic and trade relations." Before Admiral Yuna could respond, Captain Thelver entered the room. "Representative Kelvin, I speak on behalf of the Valaxi Republic. We formally request permission to establish full diplomatic and trade relations with human space. We owe them everything."